Welcome to the fourth video in the Nature of Economics section. This video is titled Social Science. In this video, we continue on the theme of nature of economics, by looking at what kind of subject it is and what that means. We will consider the role of assumptions, and look at the ceteris paribus assumption in particular. We will consider what it means to think like an economist. We've titled this video, Social Science, so we will consider what that means in the context of experiments, which are of great importance to science as a discipline. We will then introduce the idea of positive and normative statements, as well as looking at the role of value judgments in influencing economic policy. In the previous video, we introduced the two main branches of economics, which are microeconomics and macroeconomics. This separates the subject of economics into two, allowing us to understand which topics are studied where. This does not, however, explain what kind of subject economics is. It also does not explain how economists go about their profession. Let's look at this in this video. Economics is a social science. The reason it is described as such, is that it borrows methods from science, but at the same time there is recognition that the subject is concerned with human behavior. So in what ways could it be described as a science? Economists develop theories and models so that they can explain and predict economic activity. Models are an important mechanism through which economic theory is developed. As with science, observation of real-world behavior plays an important role in the development of general theories. As theories are tested and refined, they can be used to make predictions about economic events and activity. As with science, certain assumptions may also be necessary to allow conclusions to be made. The social and human aspects of economics add another dimension for economists, as humans do not behave uniformly. While gravity in a physics experiment will always act the same way, i.e. downwards, the same cannot be said about humans in general. This is because people have choice. This means that they develop different tastes and can behave differently in similar scenarios. This introduces other factors which can make it difficult to run experiments at a meaningful scale. Using certain assumptions, however, it is still possible to reach conclusions on how people will behave on average. The complexity of human behavior means that there are naturally a number of different schools of economic thought. The models that are then built with these assumptions in mind, means that different conclusions are drawn, resulting in different policy decisions. One key assumption that you will regularly hear an economist speak of, is that of ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus is a Latin phrase that can be translated as other things being equal. This effectively means that you should assume that all factors other than the one you are assessing remain unchanged. What this allows us to do is perform comparative static analysis. We can look at the impact of changing one factor, i.e. compare, assuming that this theoretical scenario is static, unlike the world around us where economic agents are acting and reacting constantly. We can illustrate this with an example. Imagine that I am someone who likes going to the cinema to watch films and also likes watching plays at the theater. My income only allows me to do one of these activities each month, so I always choose the cheapest. Generally, a visit to the cinema is cheaper than a visit to the theater, so that is what I normally do. If in one particular month, the price of a theater visit drops below that of a cinema visit, then we could comfortably predict, ceteris paribus, I would go to the theater. Assuming that no other factors have changed, I would go to the theater. This assumption is important because we would otherwise have to compare other factors to anticipate the choice. An example could be trying to compare my taste in films and plays to arrive at a guess of what I would choose. The use of the ceteris paribus assumption in this scenario allows us to reach a conclusion about the impact of a change in price. Let's move on and consider the role that economics plays in policy development, by looking at types of statements. Economics plays a crucial role in policy decisions made by governments. This means that advice provided by economists has to be understood in the context in which it is said. Statements made by economists can therefore be summarized into two types. These are positive statements and normative statements. What is the difference, however? Positive statements are based on a theory that can be tested. You can verify the accuracy of the statement by looking at the facts. An example would be the statement that a rise in the country's base interest rate leads to a fall in house prices. You can test this by looking at data on the prices of comparable sold houses before and after an increase in the interest rate. What about normative statements? Normative statements are based on opinions and therefore contain a value judgment or a preference for one thing over another. An example would be the statement that the government should care more about looking after the homeless than protecting house prices. One can choose to agree or disagree with that value judgment, but it would be difficult to prove or disprove such an idea with facts. Economists, in their professional capacity, are typically expected to address policy questions in a positive way. This lends itself to evidence-based policy decisions. Economists have the right to make normative statements as individuals. But, in a professional capacity, they would be expected to focus on the consequences of policies and help determine which are likely to attain certain outcomes. They would not ordinarily be expected to say whether any particular outcomes are desirable. Let's recap. Ceteris paribus is a Latin phrase that can be translated as other things being equal. This allows us to assess the impact of one factor in isolation. Economics is a social science. This means that economists develop theories and models so that they can explain and predict economic activity. This is done using assumptions. The social and human aspects of economics add another dimension for economists, as humans do not behave uniformly due to their ability to exercise choice. This introduces other factors which can make it difficult to run experiments at a meaningful scale. Positive statements are based on a theory that can be tested by looking at the facts. Normative statements are based on opinions and therefore contain a value judgment or a preference for one thing over another. Economists, in their professional capacity, are typically expected to address policy questions in a positive way. They would not ordinarily be expected to say whether any particular outcomes are desirable. In a professional capacity,